Alright, continuing on with our analysis of the opening section, establishing some of the important imagery and major themes. So we mentioned double signification, we mentioned the nature imagery, technology versus the natural, some of the imagery describing certain pieces of technology with negative nature imagery versus books, which are described with more positive nature imagery. And there's Montag here, who, while he's burning the books, seems to be both enjoying it and also getting hurt by it, because he is singed and driven back by the flame. He knew that when he returned to the firehouse, he might wink at himself, a minstrel man, burnt corked, in the mirror. Later, going to sleep, he would feel the fiery smile still gripped by his face muscles, and in the dark. It never went away, that smile. It never went away as long as he remembered. So his face is gripped. It's like he is kind of powerless. He's grinning, but it's more of a grimace, a tightening of the muscles. The face is kind of gripped by that. Let's continue on. Let me get my book here. Okay, the next incident is going to be that after he leaves work, he's going to run into Clarisse. So we can kind of skip over a little bit of this section here after he leaves work, and he goes kind of through the modern transportation technology out into the air, into the still night air, and he's gonna be on his way home now. So the last few nights he had the most uncertain feelings about the sidewalk just around the corner here, moving in the starlight toward his house. He felt that a moment prior to making his turn, someone had been there. The air seemed charged with a special calm, as if someone had waited there quietly, and only a moment before he came, simply turned to a shadow and let him through. Perhaps his nose detected a faint perfume. That's going to be important. Perhaps the skin on the backs of his hands, on his face, felt the temperature rise at this one spot where a person standing might raise the immediate atmosphere 10 degrees for an instant. There was no understanding it. Each time he made the turn, he saw only the white, unused, buckling sidewalk, with perhaps on one night something vanishing swiftly across a lawn before he could focus his eyes or speak. Okay, so perfume, it's a nice smell versus the smell that he was characterized as earlier with kerosene, which we're going to see when he meets Clarisse. He smells like this gas smell, but she has this perfume smell. Notice the sidewalk is called unused. So people don't walk in this society. There's no leisure time for outdoor activities. It's not slow. Everyone's driving fast cars and going on crazy fast public transit, or being addicted to technology at home. Okay, but now tonight he slowed almost to a stop, his inner mind reaching out to turn the corner for him, had heard the faintest whisper. Breathing? Or was the atmosphere compressed merely by someone standing very quietly there, waiting? He turned the corner. The autumn leaves blew over the moonlit pavement in such a way as to make the girl who was moving there seem fixed to a sliding walk, letting the motion of the wind and the leaves carry her forward. Her head was half bent to watch her shoes stir the circling leaves. Her face was slender and milk white, and in it was a kind of gentle hunger that touched over everything with tireless curiosity. It was a look almost of pale surprise. The dark eyes were so fixed to the world that no move escaped them. Her dress was white, and it whispered. He almost thought he heard the motion of her hands as she walked, and the infinitely small sound, the white stir of her face, turning when she discovered she was a moment away from a man who stood in the middle of the pavement waiting. So notice this is our first introduction to meet Clarisse. And what is the major color symbolism that we see associated with her? We see this white color coming out very strongly. So white associated with brightness. We're going to see with light. Her house and things about her are associated with light, with whiteness, brightness, and that's going to be important symbolism when we meet Clarisse compared to Mildred. Okay. The trees overhead made a great sound, letting down their dry rain. The girl stopped and looked as if she might pull back in surprise, but instead stood regarding Montag with eyes so dark and shining and alive that he felt he had said something quite wonderful. So notice also Clarisse's eyes characterized as shining and alive. There's life there. There's some vigor to her view of the world. But he knew his mouth had only moved to say hello, and then when she seemed hypnotized by the salamander on his arm and the phoenix disc on his chest, he spoke again. "Of course," he said, "you're a new neighbor, aren't you?" "And you must be," she raised her eyes from his professional symbols, "the fireman." Her voice trailed off. "How oddly you say that. I'd have known it with my eyes shut," she said slowly. "What, the smell of kerosene?" "My wife always complains," he laughed. "You never wash it off completely." "No, you don't," she said in awe. Okay, so notice with Montag, you have this different perfume smell, but it's kerosene. And he says you never wash it off. So his work of burning the books, it's attached not only to the physical smell, but it's part of his identity. It's part of basically like a kind of guilt that is connected to him, that in his conscience he can never get rid of the feeling that he's doing something wrong, something that he's carrying around a burden with this job and not knowing really what he's doing. And this meeting with Clarisse is going to be the beginning of enlightenment and questioning. So Clarisse was characterized as very curious, and she's going to ask Montag questions. She's a very questioning person, and that's going to open up the door for Montag to start questioning. What does he really know? What's really true? What's really happening in this society? Why do they burn books? Okay, he felt she was walking in a circle about him, turning him end for end, shaking him quietly and emptying his pockets without once moving herself. "Kerosene," he said, because the silence had lengthened, "is nothing but perfume to me." So again, the connection with perfume. He smelled her perfume. She was connected with autumn leaves, and a natural smell. He's connected with this unnatural, dirty smell associated with technology. She was connected with the wind and the breeze and the leaves. Does it seem like that, really? Of course not. Why not? She gave herself time to think of it. I don't know. She turned to face the sidewalk going toward their homes. Do you mind if I walk back with you? I'm Clarisse McClellan. Clarisse, Guy Montag, come along. What are you doing out so late, wandering around? How old are you? They walked in the warm, cool, blowing night on the silvered pavement, and there was the faintest breath of fresh apricots and strawberries in the air. And he looked around and realized this was quite impossible this late in the year. So notice again, Clarisse has this nature association. Fruit, something delicious, something that is smells beautiful. And of course, what is he smelling? Her perfume. But it's important that her perfume smells like fresh apricots, smells like strawberries. Okay, so she's directly connected and associated with nature here in a positive way. So nature and Clarisse go together. What is natural? What is versus what's unnatural about technology and book burning and so on, right? Because that's where Guy Montag is coming from right now. He's coming from work. There was only the girl walking with him now, her face bright as the snow in the moonlight. And he knew she was working his questions around, seeking the best answers she could possibly give. So her face is bright as the snow in the moonlight. So we have like a double light imagery here. Two sources of light manifesting in her face. Okay, so not only snow, which is white and clear and clean, but moonlight reflecting on that snow. Well, she said, I'm 17 and I'm crazy. My uncle says the two always go together. When people ask your age, he said, always say 17 and insane. Isn't this a nice time of night to walk? I like to smell things and look at things and sometimes stay up all night walking and watch the sunrise. So what does Clarisse like to do? She likes to walk and explore nature. People in this society, like Mildred, they don't walk. Walking is actually discouraged. They drive super fast when they do drive their cars, or they stay home and watch TV or listen to the radio incessantly. So she's very different. Again, natural. They walked on again in silence, and finally she said thoughtfully, you know, I'm not afraid of you at all. He was surprised. Why should you be? So many people are. Afraid of firemen, I mean. But you're just a man, after all. He saw himself in her eyes, suspended in two shining drops of bright water, himself dark and tiny in fine detail, the lines above his mouth, everything there, as if her eyes were two miraculous bits of violet amber that might capture him and hold him intact. So again, the eyes are characterized as drops of bright water, and he is dark, tiny inside of her eyes. Her eyes are shining. The eyes as the window of the soul, the part of us that shows our intelligence, that shows our knowledge and you know who we are. Her face turned to him now was fragile milk crystal with a soft and constant light in it. Okay? So all of this light imagery is very, very important in contrast to it was not the hysterical light of electricity. Huge contrast. Natural, technology.